Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhanari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhanari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Goda Haribo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki jai, Gaura Premanande Hare Bol. I think it's easiest if I adjust the microphone. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitam Tang Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanditangscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Today I want to finish and conclude discussion about cows based on the book Cow Care in Hindu Animal Ethics, but actually we're just completing the first chapter. We've been going gradually, which is okay. What we're doing is what would be called a primary source literature review. Speaking in academic terms, we've been looking at the Sanskrit literature having to do or having some reference to cows. And we've discussed very little, but something from Rig Veda, something from two of the Upanishads, something from the Mahabharata, and something from the Srimad Bhagavatam. I think we concluded the discussion about Prithu and the milking of the earth cow, and we started to, or we didn't start, to discuss the pastimes of the 10th canto. I mentioned that the Govardhan Lila is very much about cows, because cows, we did discuss, cows are, along with all the other residents of Vrindavan, taking shelter of Govardhan when Lord Krishna lifts Govardhan. The cows, it's mentioned prior to this, are very much in distress and from the terrible storm that Indra has sent. And then Lord Krishna is protecting by lifting, as a child would lift a mushroom. He lifts on his left. The Bhagavatam says with his left hand. Other texts go into some detail and say, actually it was just the little finger of his left hand. With the greatest of ease. And then comes the apology of Indra at the end, together with Surabhi, and Surabhi performs an installation abhishek. Whenever we do an abhishek of the deities, this word abhisheka, it comes from the verbal root sinch, which means to sprinkle. Abhisheka is a thorough sprinkling with auspicious substances, which is done when a king is being consecrated. That's the basic theme of the Abhishek ritual. And so Surabhi does an Abhishek of Lord Krishna, installing him as Govinda, as the Lord of the cows. We might want to say this is the primordial royal installation or consecration ritual. That it all starts from Krishna being installed as the Lord of the cows. And of course we have the story of Lord Brahma making an attempt to steal the cows. Incidentally, it's been said that of the two offenders, Indra and Brahma, whom of the two are more serious offenders? Or is the more serious offender? Sanjay.
I heard that in the case of Brahma, Krishna was more grave because Brahma had taken away his friends.
Attempted, yes.
Whereas Indra, for 1 year, he was without them. Whereas Indra, he gave Krishna opportunity to be very close with him.
Yeah. So the more serious offense is the attempt to separate the Lord from his devotees. So Lord Brahma takes, he does this caper in English. Caper is a kind of, like a practical joke, perhaps. Taking the calves and the cowherd boys, hiding them away, only to have Krishna do a kind of transcendental substitution. He replaces all of the calves and cowherd boys in perfect fashion with exact replicas, and in this way surprises Lord Brahma. Cows. There's an issue about cow theft which goes back to the Rig Veda. I mentioned that. I think there is always this concern that there's a danger of cattle raiding. And there's a famous cattle raid attempt also in the Mahabharata when Duryodhana and his friends attempt to make a cattle raid on the cows of King Virata, with whom the Pandavas are in hiding. And then it's a very humorous story, actually, how Arjuna takes the son of Virata as his charioteer, and Arjuna is like the warrior. But the son, there's Uttara and there's Uttara, so his name is Uttara. Anyway, that's another story, but it's quite humorous. But theft of cattle was always a problem. Cows are basically, relatively speaking, in general, quite docile animals. Docile. Docile means they'll more or less go where you send them. So there's always this danger that someone will come and steal them. Why would one want to steal cows? Because they're valuable. Cows were, in traditional culture, one of the most important embodiments of wealth, living wealth. Let's see, briefly. Okay, then we have the story which is perhaps one of the most dear accounts of the Bhagavatam for the devotees, the Damodar Lila. And what's important here for us in this context is how eager Krishna is to drink milk. He's initially wanting to drink his mother's milk. His mother, Yashoda, is tending to milk from the cows, which she is churning. And she's also tending milk, which is boiling on the stove, which is boiling over, because according to the Acharyas, it's wanting to commit suicide. Milk is conscious milk. Why committing suicide? Because the milk is feeling useless, because Krishna is being fed on the milk of his mother, Yashoda, and so on. And then, on top of all of this, what does Krishna do? He steals milk. Although everything is, he has plenty of everything, and he also steals milk from the neighbors. Mother Yashoda concludes that she needs to provide better milk, and therefore she has very special cows, very special grass, to keep Krishna from stealing from the neighbors, which is highly embarrassing to have your child, going and breaking into your neighbor's storage and breaking pots. So all of this, of course, is giving a message that milk is very dear to Krishna, mother's milk and also cow's milk. And this is then a kind of essential understanding from the perspective of bhakti. We don't get so much sense of bhakti in the earlier literature. We get some traces, some feeling, because in the Bhagavatam, it says, Nigama kalpataror galitan palang shukamukad amritadrava samyutam. That this Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic literature. So the tree is kind of dry. But the fruit is what's interesting. That's the Bhagavatam. And the fruit, what is that fruit? It is Krishna Bhakti. And what is the most characteristic medium, physical medium for communicating and experiencing bhakti? It's cow's milk. And so it's sometimes said that milk is liquid religion. One explanation being it is that which is given with love. The mother gives milk to the child with a sort of love which is elsewhere rare, hard to find in this world. Similarly, the cow gives for her calf and for others. So, so that's touching on some of the references to cows in the Bhagavatam, cows and milk. And now I'm jumping forward in time to Braj Bhakti Poetry. And I've given a subtitle of this section, The Buttery Sweet Language of Love. And we jump to the 16th century to a particular poem by credited to Surdas. It's one of my favorites, and I wanted to include the entire poem in the book, but the editor for the publisher that I worked with, she said, "I'm very sorry, but there are very strict rules against publishing an entire poem of someone else in your book. You can't do that unless you get permission. But getting that permission, you have to get it from their publisher, and it's a big headache, and there wasn't much time for that. So she said, you can quote like 4 lines of the poem. Shishi Palad Lakshmi Singhadev Ki Jai. So I had to sort of paraphrase and give little excerpts. So here I'm just going to read what I have. Gopal is described as being, quote, in the butter. The shimmering color of which contrasts with his own, quote, dusk-toned body. So this poem is giving a picture. It's a very vivid picture of little Krishna who has stolen the butter. Then follows a cascade of images mirroring and echoing a sense of divine grace occurring in liquid form. It's really very poetic. The freshly churned butter, quote, trickling down his face to his chest, as if the far ambrosial moon, nectar moon, rained beams on love's below. So it's this picture of, he's stealing the butter and he's stuffing it in his face, and it's going all over, and it's trickling down, it's going down his front. And then the comparison. It's like the nectar moon is raining down beams of light. And the moon is always associated with love and romance. So there are lovers, and they're looking at the full moon, and they're falling in love with each other, and it's all very sweet and romantic. So there's an allusion, there's a suggestion here that what Krishna's doing is inspiring love. Then, shifting the metaphor, Surdas suggests a sense of excitement and danger. Gopal has, quote, risen to peer from his lair. A lair is where lions live, like in a cave sort of place. So he's risen to, he's looking out. He's stolen the butter, and now he's like looking like this. So that's described. risen to peer from his lair, perhaps like a lion cub, to look about and confirm that no one is looking. Quote, and then he cheerfully feeds his friends. Surdas's audience knows from the Bhagavata Purana account that these friends are monkeys, whose impish company points to Krishna's inclination to freely extend his kindness to all beings. The poem's colophon, which means like the signature at the end, turns our attention to the intense affection of Krishna's beloveds, the, quote, loves below, the gopi maidens who have delightedly witnessed Krishna's mischief. And now I quote the last 4 lines of the poem, in translation, of course. Seeing Sur's lord in his boyish fun, the maidens, the gopis, start, love-struck and weakened, until their hearts are lost in speech. They are lost to speech in thought after thought after thought. In other words, they become stunned and they can't speak. Because they're so wonderstruck by little Krishna's charming, mischievous beauty. Okay, all of this is a kind of echo of another pastime in the Bhagavatam, namely the churning of the ocean of milk. And you can say that the churning of the ocean of milk, that whole Leela, is anticipating Damodar Leela. It's preparing us for Damodar Leela. But there's a difference, and that is that the churning of the ocean of milk is manifesting so many elements, beings, principles, things. In a sense, it's a process of creating, cosmic creation. Of course, Lakshmi herself appears and so on. But in this case, starting with Mother Yashoda's churning, and then what does Krishna do? He's breaking pots of butter. So I say, yet Krishna's butter theft may also be regarded as an undoing of cosmic churning. It's the opposite. Wherein, quote, the sea of milk products that the butter thief unleashes is the sea of love, unquote. This I'm quoting one scholar, Jack Hawley, who has done this translation. He's an expert on Surdas's poetry. He's published very much on Surdas, and he is very competent knower of the Brajbhasa language. You can see an interview I did with him on YouTube, where he talks about this pastime on our YouTube channel, which is it? It's the same channel where we have our full film about the Bhagavatam. yeah. So then I make the point, this story of the churning of the ocean of milk is about affirming the Dharma's cosmic order. Because there's an attempt to foil this effort for cosmic order, namely the demons, and especially Rahu is trying to steal the nectar, right? In contrast, Krishna's successful butter theft is a playful shattering of Dharma's seemingly rigid boundaries, allowing to prevail what the Bhakti traditions hold to be essential for Dharma to be properly realized, namely divine love. So it's establishing that Bhakti is more, it's the foundation of Dharma. You can also kind of say the opposite. Dharma is a foundation for Bhakti, because without Dharma, nothing holds together. Okay, now I want to read something else, which I think you will like. Yes, now I read a passage, a translation of a passage from Raghunath Das Goswami's Braja Vilasa Stava. And here he's describing Krishna and his cows. Okay. This is a bit longer. I'll not read too fast. The hooves of Sri Krishna's Surabhi cows are decorated with sapphires. Imagine having our cows decorated, the hooves, the feet, the hooves, decorated with sapphires. Their horns are gold-plated, and their white cheeks have broken the snow-capped mountain peak's pride. Apparently they were white on the sides. I pray these Surabhi cows may protect us. In the company of Balaram, Krishna's brother, and his other friends, and his own body splendidly covered with the dust raised by their hooves, the prince of Raja, who is that? Krishna. The prince of Raja, Krishna, daily enjoys a great festival of protecting and milking the cows. He enjoys a festival every day of protecting and milking the cows. With great happiness, he eagerly enjoys pastimes with them in the great forests and on the grand hills and riverbanks of Braja. Let me worship these Surabhi cows. Glory to Padmaganda, the favorite bull of the enemy of Baka, who is Krishna, whose handsome horns are covered with gold and studded with jewels, whose hooves are splendidly decorated with sapphires, and whose fine neck bears a swinging garland of reddish flowers. Sometimes Lord Krishna feeds the calves, attentively placing small bunches of soft, fresh grass in their mouths, and sometimes he very carefully massages their legs. I yearn to one day see these calves of Lord Krishna jumping and frolicking in Vrindavan. So it's a prayer, I think it would be called Lalasa Mayi, an expression of longing. I long to see the cows of Vrindavan. And what are they doing? They are jumping and frolicking. Frolic means playing. Another nice passage is given to us by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Gopal Champu. A champu is a particular genre of Sanskrit literature. It's combination of metered poetry and unmetered prose, going back and forth. And so Jiva Goswami has written a champu called the Gopal Champu. Kavi Karnapura has also written a champu called Ananda Vrindavan Champu. So in his Gopala Champu, Jiva Goswami writes about the first day Lord Krishna is performing his duty of caring for the cows. He's graduating from being caring for the calves to caring for the cows, because now he is 6 years old. He's old enough to take care of the cows. So Jiva Goswami says, the arrangements for going to the forest were as follows. Putting the priests in front with songs, music, and auspicious verses, bringing the cows near and worshipping them by offering foot wash and arghya. Padya and arghya. Feeding them sweet chickpeas, respecting them with obeisances and circumambulation, and then offering the same respects to the priests. Krishna, with his elder brother, remained standing in front of Nanda, who had his hands folded. Nanda offered him, Krishna, a jeweled staff, a stick, and Yashoda put tilak on his forehead. That's the beginning of Krishna's graduation to becoming a full-fledged cowherd boy at age 6. And I point out that one thing significant in this passage is that the cows take the role of venerable deities. And Krishna, despite or because of being the supreme Bhagavan, offers them honor with all the standard ritual forms. Padyam, Argyam, I guess they didn't offer them Achamaniya, but maybe just mentions Padya and Argya. Right. Okay, that's some modern. No, that's some pre-modern. That's 16th century literature. And then, just briefly, I kind of jump forward to 20th century. In which we find, I was able to find one book called the Gavarchana Prayoga. This was compiled by one sadhu in India whom I met, who's a real Go Sevak, enthusiastic. This is a compendium of rituals, of procedures for venerating, for worshipping cows. I have a copy of it. It's all in Devanagari script. It's Sanskrit verses and then Hindi translations. But it gives all kinds of interesting information. There's a section which has mantras for remembering, praising, and petitioning cows, including appropriate mantras from the 4 Vedas, a mantra for protecting cows, and a mantra titled Means for Increasing Cow Milk. And then this section is followed by procedures for performing ritual fire oblations dedicated to cows. One Goshala I visited in Gujarat, a relatively small Goshala. They had, I think it was between 100, maybe something more than 100 cows, gyr cows. And they had a Gurukul right next to the Goshala. And every day they would perform a yajna in the Goshala with the Gurukul children, both boys and girls, would sit at the yajna, the cows watching as they would do a yajna for the cows. And then they would all stand up and stand before the cows, and they would chant mantras, so many mantras. It was going on and on and on. They were singing mantras to the cows. It was very inspiring to see, and this was, they told us, this is every day they're doing in the early evening. Then come instructions for observing occasional vows, vratas, in relation to cows at specific times of the year, followed by detailed instructions on the correct way to give cows and bulls in charity for different purposes. For example, to counteract sinful acts, to become free from debt, or for attaining liberation. So a lot of it is kind of karma kanda elements are there. Then there's a collection of prayers and hymns, including a Surabhi Kavacham, protection of Surabhi, which invokes the various physical features of the cow to protect oneself in all sorts of circumstances. There's a bovine miscellany that includes instructions such as how to prepare panchamrita, and other things. Yeah, so that's there. And then I also found there's a 2 volumes of, 2 quite thick volumes, collection of articles in Hindi language that have been published by this establishment, Gita Press, in North India. And one of these books is called Go Unk. Unk just means issue, like an issue of a journal. And the other is called Go Seva Unk. And one was published, I believe, in the late 1940s. And the second one was published in, I think it was 1995. Yeah, so it's a collection of articles written by various pundits and people who know different things about cows. There's a lot of this Indian nationalism mixed into the articles. Yeah, that is there. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much all that I was able to bring together. Oh, yeah, in a footnote, I have some examples of some of the titles of articles in this Go Unk. A lot of things there. Prayers to Kamadhenu by Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. That's one article. Consideration of the Dharma and non-Dharma of plowing is an article. Mother Cow is another. The importance of cow eulogy and cow protection. Cow killing is the same as human killing. It's the title of an article. The glories of cows in Aryan literature. Worshipable mother cow is directly Narayana, Vishnu. Cow wealth versus tractor. Cows, the foundation of the Rajasthan Maru district's economy. Cow dung, Lakshmi's residence. Cow care and cow-related vows in the Swami Narayan tradition. Devotion to cows in the Sikh tradition. The position of cows in Buddhist literature. Testing milk cows. Cows of Western countries. Advice for breeding and protecting cows. Ancient cow shelters and scriptural rules for cow protection. And so on, and so on, and so on. Let's see if there's... Cows and Islam is one of the articles. Cows and bulls in Indian currency. Attaining the Lord by serving cows. Yeah, so all of that is there. This is maybe a project for our Hindi readers to translate into English. How's your Hindi, Gopi? Non-existent? Oh, you Gujaratis, you. Narahari? She's also only Gujarati speaking, no?
No, she speaks Hindi.
Yeah? Okay, maybe we see if she can be inspired to do some of this. Yeah, so, Go Seva Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Comments, questions? Yes, Hastingapal.
Hare Krishna. So, in Krishna book, in chapter 6, Putana killed. After Putana was killed, and gopis noticed that Krishna is playing on a dead body of Putana. So they realized that Krishna has to be put into the purificatory rituals, which are very much connected to the cows. And so many cow products are used to purify Krishna.
Yeah.
And also there are chanted mantras for protection of Krishna, particularly names of Krishna, Narayana. And for me it's very interesting that this purification process is concluded by Prabhupada saying persons who are advancing in Krishna consciousness should take instruction from this pastime and also be very much interested in cows and the holy name of Vishnu. So this is the first thing. I found it very interesting that Prabhupada is writing like that. So this is just a comment, and my question is, you remember this purification process probably?
Yeah.
You were traveling a lot, seeing the cow protection in the world, and this was 5,000 years before, when people were convinced about the importance of cow protection, and not only draining the milk, but spiritual importance of protection of cows. Did you see such communities still in the world existing, like performing such purificatory processes and being conscious of the importance of cow?
Well, yes, in India you find these groups. There are various organizations and groups who are specifically kind of in a kind of activist mood to protect cows, and some of this they will speak about. In villages, I would suppose it's not that I've been. This would be a good question for Bhakti Raghavat Swami, who has done serious study of village life in India. I should find out by now. It must be done. He was doing a formal research project, like a doctoral research project on village life in India. So I think he would be knowing better what's going on, sort of grassroots, if some of these things are being done. I have read and this is somewhat related, I've read one book by an anthropologist, a lady who studied people in the Himalayan hill region, one part of the Himalayan hill region within India, focusing on their relations with their animals. One chapter is about a particular family and their cows, and she speaks about how the grandmother was preparing to leave her body, and she insisted that the younger people bring a cow, and as I remember specifically, a Deshi cow means an Indian cow, because they had some mixed breed cows also, and this was part of the issue, how pure are these non-Deshi cows. That's a whole thing in India. It's mixed in with this nationalist idea, I think. But she wanted to have a cow. She wanted to be holding on to the tail of the cow as she left her body. And apparently they were able to manage that. So things like that are there. Yes,
Hare Krishna Maharaj,
the
thank you for
self-satisfied one.
Beautiful class. I have heard the rumors that Krishna sometimes is described of being black due to drinking the milk from the black cow.
Oh.
And you mentioned that Yashodamata had a special cow and special grass. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I'm sorry, I wouldn't be able to say anything authoritative. But what you say, it sounds like the sort of thing that acharyas sometimes will mention. Or it's something which is a local tradition, or a combination of both. Sometimes the acharyas are writing something which is from a Braj tradition. And then it goes the other way as well. Something from the acharya will filter through the villages. But I can't say, I haven't read this myself, but I'm for such information, I would think the person to ask would be Shivaram Swami Maharaj. He's investigating these things quite carefully, usually. Probably other devotees as well. Or Dinabandhu. Yes, Dinabandhu, our official ISKCON Brijbasi. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, thank you very much for a beautiful class. I would like to ask to one point what you mentioned when you was listening some points to cows. Cows related to Muslim tradition. Maybe when you can say there are some...
I haven't, again, it always happens. You give a class and then come all the questions that you don't know how to answer. I haven't read that article. I just gave the name of the article. My Hindi leaves something to be desired, but I could probably work through it with the help of a dictionary. So I can't say anything. What the article says. there are Muslims in India who have, let's say, similar mood as quote-unquote Hindus, that cows are to be protected. So it's not that, if someone's a Hindu, that if someone's a Muslim, that means they're into cow killing. That's not necessarily true. But that would be a subject to investigate. I can't say much more. There are traditions of cow protection in other parts of the world. I mean, in Africa, there are tribes. I'm not remembering the name now, but there are tribes in Eastern Africa where they live on they live from having cows. It's not that they don't ever kill the cow. I believe they do in certain circumstances. I don't know. They have some rituals also of drawing blood from the cow and drinking it. The cow is alive. That's something we don't do. But still, they do have some ideas like that. There are a lot of cultures where the bull has been somehow sacred. Ancient Greek, and I believe also Egyptian society, culture. The bull, possibly also the cow, had some sort of sacred status. And sacred means that it's very possible that this animal, being sacred, will be sacrificed. They will have some ritual of sacrifice. That is also there. But they're not having slaughterhouse. That's the point. And Prabhupada speaks about that this is a Vedic principle. The Veda accommodates everyone in their material desires, giving them a way of progressing, and therefore those who want to eat meat, for them there is a way to eat meat, that they perform sacrifice of animal. There's a ritual, and in the ritual there is a mantra which is saying, now I'm killing you, next time you can kill me, so that the person becomes conscious of the consequences of what they're doing. And at the same time, if they still want the meat, okay, this is the way. So, this was chapter 2. Chapter 1 is the introduction. And the next chapter, maybe next time I come, I don't know. We could get into it. Next chapter is called Cows in Contested Fields, and that's where we discuss about the modern history of the Indian cow protection movement, and about controversies over this subject of not just cow, but in general animal sacrifice, as described in Vedic and post-Vedic literature. So this gets into the contested fields, the areas which are debated. Yes, Akila Prabhu.
You were giving us this report about the richness of the culture of Vedic culture, the worship of the cows in the Vedic culture, and in comparison to that, the Western attitude is completely the opposite. It just goes into exploiting the cattle, as they call it, killing it at the end. My father was a farmer. I also learned about this in the farmer school. It's just about exploiting. Do you see any traces of cow respecting and cow worship, cow appreciating here in the Western culture?
I came across, as I was doing some online surfing for any material for this, I came across it was a kind of list of cows in the UK in the 19th century, and all the cows had names.
They have, yes, all the farmers give names to the cows.
Yeah, that was standard. So the fact that they gave them names was already something which is, I think, quite significant compared to the mass industrial, mass treatment that happens now. I don't know if, like our neighbors, if they give names to their cows here.
My father used to, and they all had cows. We only had 12, and he was very sad when he was selling them at the end.
Yeah.
They had names and they had their different characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Names and family names.
They don't give names. Yeah. They do. Sorry? Okay, so one family they do. Yeah. For some time in Radhadesh, we had our Gopala devotee there. He was going around to the neighbors and kind of in a nice way was preaching to them, and he was trying to encourage them to name their cows. That was his... I thought that was nice. Why don't you name your cows? Because when the cows have names, there's a change, isn't it? Immediately there's some sort of relationship. That gets one thinking. And as you mentioned, your father was very sad when he would send a cow for slaughter. This anthropologist writing about in North India described the same, that this family, they simply could not afford to keep one cow, and there's all kinds of euphemisms surrounding, sort of letting the cow go and so on. They don't talk about selling for slaughter or whatever. But the woman describing is quite touching, actually. She was really deeply sad that she saw no other choice, apparently, than to let this cow be taken away. There's a big thing going on now in Uttar Pradesh. It's highly political. The chief minister, Yogi Adityanath, is a fiery Hindutva guy. and he's been making laws for protecting cows, which is very nice, but initially it wasn't planned out very carefully, and so the farmers, okay, we can't take for slaughter, we can't slaughter ourselves, so what do we do? They would let them go to wander, and then you had thousands of cows wandering around the state, eating everybody's crops. And so then other farmers became very angry. What is this? So then they've been creating goshalas for the old cows, and they've been establishing taxes to pay for those. I forgot what they call it, a certain kind of tax on, I don't know on what items or what services, but so they've been trying to make things work in a practical way. And it'll be interesting to see over time if that can really be established. Krishna, yes.
Very short point which I maybe missed, maybe not. Connecting to the South Africa or some there was this tribe called Zulu.
The Zulus, yeah.
Yes, in the Nunasami used to tell this story that when he was traveling there, and he found out that the name of God was Nkulunkul, means one who has lots of cows. Nkulunkul.
Nkulunkul. Nice. Yes, God has lots of cows.
Hare Krishna, you mentioned that there are mantras what they chanting to the cows to increase the milk. And as far as I know, the milk quality and quantities depends very much what the cows are eating. And the Karmi farmers or the not Vaishnava farmers, they very much manipulating the milk like this and do what they give to the cows and how they keep them. Is this okay to do this from the devotees? If not, why? And if yes, to what degree?
Sorry, to do what specifically?
To increase the milk with by feeding different.
Oh, yeah, that's something I'm also no expert about. Certainly, it's not right to make them so they're actually becoming ill as a result. That's certainly not the right thing. So, but good grass, everything in moderation, right? That's our principle. Yukta ahara. I think that applies to cows as well. And this is an issue which I've learned about recently. There's a devotee in America who did extensive research, a lot of research in academic journals. He had access at one time to try to understand, to answer the question, what is it in milk? What is the chemical in milk that Prabhupada speaks of is nourishing the quote-unquote finer tissues of the brain? Prabhupada always speaks about that. What is that? Is there something to that? And he found that there is a chemical substance with one of these super long names, which is shortened to DHA. I don't remember the long name, And this is something which cows themselves are not producing, but they are getting from the foliage, from certain plants. And therefore, it's actually, to have that benefit of milk, you need to have cows grazing in the open land where there is a variety of plants, not just one sort of grass, but a variety. Then you will get that DHA in the milk. And if you don't get it from the DHA in the milk, you can get it from microorganism sea in the sea. You get it from algae or something, and there are companies that produce this. But as this devotee researched, he said that's not sustainable. Getting it from the sea organisms, and therefore we should have cow protection. But what is that cow protection? We should be grazing on open land. That's what he explained, yeah.
The state pays subsidies to farmers who don't use artificial manure and all these chemicals to destroy certain herbs, special herbs. All the farmers, the neighbors, they are eager to get this money from the state. Bergbauernzuschuss, state support. So they don't use chemicals and artificial manure.
That's
and
nice.
Some of them are just, how say, bio farmer, organic farmers.
Yeah, that's good. So I think we'll end there. Thank you all very much, and all best wishes for Sridham Simhachalam Vasis, and I look forward to coming again whenever Krishna lets me come. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Prahlad Lakshmi Nrsingadeva ki jai, Go Seva ki jai, Gaur Premanande.